Hello, everybody. It is June the 26th, 2026. Welcome, everybody. Coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. This is episode number 99. Yes, that's a biggie. We've made it to episode number 99, and I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight on this Friday night. And tonight's guest, he's somebody that I have to tell you this. And I'm not just saying this. He is, out of the 99 people that I've had on here, or close to that, because we've had some repeat guests. Mike is one of my favorites. He's one of the ones that I have had on here that honestly, first of all, he was on episode number 40, and on that particular episode, it's just a dynamite episode. I love it, and there's things that he's doing that this guy is absolutely changing the profession with respect to correction officers, and he's just doing his thing, and he's doing a lot of great stuff, and that's why I really like having him on. I'd reached out to him about 6 months ago, wanting to come back, and he goes, "Well, just hang on a minute," and the reason why is because he actually wrote another book. This guy has got books coming out of his ears, and we'll talk about a lot of those books, and we're going to talk about some of the children's books that he's put together as well, and anyway, it's good to be here. You know, I love coming to you guys every Friday night. I think that's great. I was speaking in Indiana at the Indiana State Coroners Association, where it's basically their training. They do 2 trainings a year, but this is the biggie. And so I was there, and I got my plates signed. I got an Indiana plate behind me, and what a great group of people. I wanted to that's some of the cool swag that I ended up with at this conference. You know, I've got enough of this stuff that my wife's like, "What are you going to do with all this stuff?" And I'm like, I don't know. One day I'm going to be able to display it somewhere. I need a man cave to do that in, but maybe one day. And I wanted to thank Amanda up there, and she's with the Indiana Donate Life, and I've got an epic pair of socks, which is cool, and she's super. And just all the people that I've met up there, they've said that I'm an honorary Hoosier, and I love it. I love it. That was my second time to speak there. I have a feeling that maybe one day down the line I'll see them again. If you want to see more of the photos from the event, please check out my Detective Jason White Facebook page, or you can go to TikTok. I've posted the pictures on there, and I'm going to be having many more pictures come on. I'm so excited about tonight. I really am. This is an episode that I've been waiting for. Michael Cantrell is a 29-year veteran of corrections, retiring as chief of the Office of Emergency Preparedness for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. He led special response teams, disturbance control units, and canine operations, and is recognized as a leading expert in the correctional breaching operations and use of force. He is certified instructor in firearms, non-lethal weapons, and disturbance control. His new memoir, The Weight of Justice, takes readers inside a career spent navigating the gray space between order and chaos. The decisions made in seconds, the weight carried for years, and what it truly cost to serve in America's most demanding profession. It is an unflinching look at corrections work told from the inside. Michael is also the author of Power Skills, Emotional Intelligence for High-Stakes Professionals. That came out last year. I don't even know if we had him on for that one. The Keys to Your Career in Corrections, which is, that's probably one of my favorites, but there's another one that I really like the looks of, and that's Finding Your Purpose. And he also wrote And Born of the Ozarks, as well as a series of children's books, which we are going to talk about tonight because I think that's awesome. The other thing that he's involved in is he's a host of the Prison Officer podcast. He is one of the most influential voices in corrections today, and Michael reaches thousands of officers, administrators, and advocates each week. His work has appeared in over 50 published articles across ILETA Journal, corrections1.com, and American Jails Magazine. A sought-after speaker, so listen up, guys. He's a sought-after speaker and trainer. Michael presents on leadership, emotional intelligence, crisis response, and career resilience for corrections professionals and first responders nationwide. I cannot think of a better guest to have on tonight than Mike Cantrell. Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all that. Your intro music always makes me want to go back and look at my intro music.
Let me tell you, I think it's pretty good, isn't it? I like it. Yeah, it'll be great until I get copyrighted again. But
get your guests all wound up.
Listen, man, I mean that with all sincerity. I think out of all the guests that I've had on here, you are truly in a very small handful of one of my favorites. Honestly, I think that you just and I'm not here just to sit here and just. I mean it. You have made a significant difference in the world of corrections. I don't know of anybody else out there that when Warden Parker recommended you, you certainly did not disappoint in our other episode. And the guy couldn't say enough praise about you, and I see why. And really, so you're having tremendous success right now, and I think that's well deserved. And like I told you off air, I want to be you when I grow up. I mean, you just got so many things going on. I don't know where you find the time. So, hey, are you completely retired right now?
I'm telling everybody I'm failing retirement. I am retired from the Federal Bureau of Prisons, but I was talking to some kids the other day. They were like, well, can we do this on this day? And I said, I work 7 days a week. It doesn't matter to me. You guys are the ones taking days off, but I love what I do. I waited years to be able to do some of this stuff because especially working for the Bureau of Prisons, they wouldn't let you work outside because you might say something that was against, their policies or whatever. So all these ideas that I had, they just kind of sat there. And actually I gave them the podcast idea. I wrote that up and they sent it to legal and it sat there for 1.5 years. And then I retired and said, well, I'll just do it since nobody can make a decision. I hadn't planned on doing it myself. I was going to do it for the Bureau.
Yeah, well, we need to get you some more subscribers to your YouTube page. There's no doubt. You are definitely, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, when you're watching this tonight, you have to check out his podcast. It's very informative. Your guests are exceptional. And anyway, hey, remind the viewers. So many of the people that may be in here didn't catch episode number 40, which I highly recommend you go back and check out because it's really good. Sure. But just remind people how you ended up, kind of a little bit of the background as to how you got involved in this industry.
Accident. It was an absolute accident. I was working on a government contract as a cook, did that for several years overseas on an island the other side of Hawaii in the middle of nowhere, and was back on leave, fell in love. By the way, we, I think 35 years this year. So it worked out. It was worth it.
Congrats.
But I decided I needed to stay home. And so I'm reading the newspaper, which have one ads back then. And it said, cook wanted, Missouri State Pen. I didn't even know what Missouri State Pen was. And so I applied, and she calls me back like 3 days later. And she says, we don't need cooks. We need COs. And I said, what's a CO? I mean, I had grown up around police and firemen. My dad was a fireman. All of our friends were cops. But I never saw the jails. I never saw the prisons. I didn't even know that really existed. So I thought I was going into public service, and I think we talked last time about corrections isn't looked at as the same public services, firefighters and rescue and police officers. We're kind of on the fringe of that in the public perception, which is, that's a lot of what I talk about and write about, I've worked with some of the most amazing people over 29 years. I mean, amazing people with great skills. Some of the best leaders I've ever seen are hidden behind walls. So part of my mission since I've retired is just to bring that to light, let people see what we do. We're quit hiding, prison corrections hides because they're so scared somebody's going to judge them or say we did this wrong or whatever. and it's time to stop that. Let's stand up and show them what we can do.
Yeah. How are we ever going to get past that? I think maybe in part by what you're doing right now, actually. Maybe they'll lighten up a little bit.
And it's grown a little bit. There's some other podcasts that have come on since, I'm on. Congratulations on 99. That is a huge step.
It is.
I think I've hit 130 something. And so there's been people come in behind me that have started up some similar podcasts. There's always been the whole inmate, hey, this happened on the yard and I stuck him. And there's always been that kind of podcast. But when it comes to correctional leadership, when it comes to professionalism, when it comes to resilience and teaching and that type of stuff, there wasn't really one there for that when I started. But there's a couple more now. So I feel like it's going. I feel like I'm helping it.
Yeah, I there's no doubt that you're helping it for sure. So your experience, and you've worked in a variety of different prisons, and remind the listeners as to what prisons. I know it was Missouri State is kind of one of them, and Bureau of Prisons. But what else? Where? Because I think you've worked at some other stuff, right?
I have. Missouri State Pen was my first one. I tell everybody I'm so old that my first place I worked is now a museum. So for $12, you can go see where I worked. I just got to go back there last week. They let me, since I started there, and we'll talk more about it with the book, but some of my stories are from there. So they let me go in and record a podcast in there. So that'll be coming up here in a couple of weeks, where I recorded from inside the prison, even though it's a museum now.
That's pretty cool.
So, yeah.
That's real cool.
I did that work, did the canine unit out of a place called Ozark Correctional Center, went federal, ended up at Leavenworth, was my first federal stint. I did a couple of years up there, and then I went to the Federal Medical Center in Springfield, Missouri. A lot of people know that as Club Fed or Fed Med. It's where John Gotti, it's where he spent his time. Gigante, the Odd Father, the Shoe Bomber. You remember the guy, I Am the Captain, off of Captain Phillips movie?
Yeah.
We had him there. He thought he was crazy till he saw real crazy people, and then he decided he wasn't crazy anymore.
Yeah.
But he was trying to do a whole psych thing.
I mean, that had to have been kind of interesting, just seeing some of these notorious figures that, I mean, did you ever have an opportunity to just kind of visit, more small talk than anything else, to like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, with some of them, and the thing you learn is that once they're at that level, they're just an inmate. They don't have, their power dissipates. Everything that kept them afloat on the outside kind of dissipates. They do have a little bit of maybe yard cred, that they come in with. Gotti had some of that, but towards the end of his life, he was just a rundown old man that was dying of cancer. And he didn't talk, he didn't talk to people, and I didn't talk to him because he was just he was a mean old man. That's all I can tell you. The whole Dapper Don thing had disappeared by that time.
I'm
they
sure
come with their own set of troubles, with family members and legal, and of course, they all get special treatment. They get judges mandate certain things for them, and administration gives them certain things. So they all come with their own trouble. Yeah.
Huh. Like give me give me just one example of something that they would probably, give one of those guys a little bit different.
Yeah. The Blind Sheik. Have you ever heard of him? He was part of the 93 bombing of the World Trade Centers.
Okay.
And he was one of the most powerful clerics in the Muslim faith, and he was blind. We had to buy him a special clock that played the call to prayer. Plus he had access to Al Jazeera on the radio. He's a Muslim. He was a terrorist, and we're letting him listen to Al Jazeera, but that was mandated outside of anything that we could do. Yeah.
Wow. When I watch Goodfellas, I remember that part where Henry Hill is in the federal pen with Uncle Paulie and the rest of the big time figures and stuff, and they're like getting Italian food and stuff, and they're cooking. They're getting some special privileges in Atlanta. I think that's where they were at, which is like Leavenworth. I mean, it's like a biggie. It's one of the big,
it's old,
the big places, and I mean, Was there kind of some truth to that? I mean, that's kind of what you're talking about a little bit?
Yeah, the part that's not the truth was the officers turning the complete blind eye and letting them have a cell that they had turned into a kitchen. Uh, that doesn't happen in the feds anywhere I was at. But
Okay.
as far as pasta, yeah, they will pay out the nose. Those old Italian guys, which we had a bunch of them at Leavenworth back in the 90s, and they would pay out the nose to get somebody to steal pasta out of the kitchen for them. That was
Wow.
just their thing. They didn't care about knives. They didn't care about drugs. They did want pasta and food. That was just a big part of their culture, So that was what they spent their time trying to get a hold of. But it was cool. You kind of watch those old Italian guys and those old mobsters, and they'd hang out on the upper rail, and um, they were running stuff, but they never looked like they were running stuff. It kind
Yeah.
of probably what it looked like on a street corner somewhere, and is what I imagine. But
Yeah.
for the most
Interesting.
part, you never had trouble with them. Now there was trouble attached to them, but it was never them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they probably weren't the type. They probably were used to the fact of going to prison. That it's just
Yeah.
part of the business, you know.
Yeah.
And but anyway, yeah. I tell you, one of the things that I've kind of, I was talking to an old gangster a long time ago, and what I
Hmm.
noticed in part from some of these, like we're talking like Hoover Crips and Bloods and stuff like that,
Yeah.
where they've kind of adopted some of the rules of the mafia. You know what I mean? Like basically accountability and holding the court, and all this other stuff, and they've kind of researched that and watched it, and they've tried to implement that within their gang structure, which is a lot more loosely, set up anyway, where kind of people
Sure.
do their own thing, but they've kind of modeled it after that a little bit, which they were doing some stuff. They're not nearly what they were at the time. So your journey through the industry of being a
Hmm.
correctional officer, let's just kind of go through that just briefly as to how you started in that, and you progressed through the ranks, and what was that like?
I didn't want to be there for the first 10 years. I was still trying to become a cop. I was still trying to become a firefighter, and I hated being a correctional officer. And I was about 10 years in when I realized that, you know, I've got time invested in this, and I was getting chances at leadership, chances at promotion. So I finally embraced it. And after I embraced it, I realized that I hadn't taken the time to understand leadership. Leadership's more than just the authority. Anybody can give you the authority, but that doesn't mean you can walk in as a leader. And so that became kind of, some of the things I've written and articles and stuff. That was where that started, because that was my journey to learn how I was going to lead these people. Because that's what mattered to me. I don't care. And people look at this the wrong way sometimes. I don't care about reentry. I don't care about recidivism. That's not my world. My world is to keep them inside the fence. That's the way I've always been. And everybody that works inside the fence with me and the people I take care of, they have to remain safe. So those have always been my goals. It may not be the agency's goals, it may not be everybody's goals, but those were my goals. So I had to learn how to keep people safe. I had to learn how to lead them so that we could get the job done without people getting hurt, and everybody got to go home to their family.
Yeah.
And so that was where my journey started. I got my lieutenant at 11, or excuse me, I got my lieutenant at Springfield. Um, which Springfield's a crazy place. It's about a quarter of the inmates are medical, about a quarter of them are dialysis, about a quarter of them are lower level, and they do a lot of the jobs. And then about a quarter of them are some of the worst mental health inmates in the country. And so we do multiple use of forces. So I became very good at running use of force teams. I became very good with less lethal, doing that kind of stuff, restraints, getting guys pulled out, because a lot of them are constantly suicide, trying to hurt themselves, doing things to their anatomy that you probably can't imagine. You probably can, but the
Yeah.
average person can't.
Yeah.
So I got a lot
Pretty
of experience real quick in one place there.
Yeah,
And then
that's
they asked,
crazy.
yeah, and then they asked me to go open up the Supermax at Thompson, Illinois. I did that for 5 years as a captain. And then I got my dream job, which was to get the chief of emergency preparedness. And that job put me in charge of like 300 of the special teams, which I'd always been on teams. I love teams. I love the camaraderie. I
Mhm.
love being part of a group like that. And so that's where I finished out my career, even though ended up in the middle of COVID. So most of my time was spent in a national command center, but I still got experiences that, a lot of people wouldn't have.
Yeah, I didn't realize that there was a Supermax in Illinois. Is it just
It's
like
not
the
in,
one in Florence, Colorado, basically?
nope, it's an administrative United States penitentiary, but now it's been downgraded since I've gotten out. So in 19, let me think, let me walk through this. So in 2014, the Bureau got that. Illinois built it. Their senator at the time, there was a couple of senators that had the money to build it, but they didn't put up the money to staff it. So there was a fight, and I don't understand all the politics, but so it
Mhm.
sat there empty for almost a decade. And when one of those senators became president, which was Obama, he said, "Here, Bureau of Prisons, have a prison." So we
Wow.
adopted this prison that was 10 years old, though it was brand new. But
Yeah.
the technology from 10 years before, we had to re-up everything. It wasn't built to Bureau standards. So it took us a couple of years just to get it running. And it was going to be the new administrative, which means you could put any level there up to the highest max. And we were going to, get some of the worst guys off the other yards and kind of clean up the Bureau. And I don't know what happened after I left. They had some problems. Um, I won't go into all that, but they decided to scrap that. And now it's, I think, a medium. Not positive, but I think it's a medium now, or a medium high.
Huh. Yeah, I've been to Florence. I interviewed somebody there in Florence, Colorado, and it was
Cool.
pretty cool to be able to go there because it's just not a place that anybody can just go. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's it's not one of the. It's just it's pretty unique. I mean, it's one of those pretty. It was fascinating to go there. I know that they were checking you every 50 feet. It was
Mm.
that secure. It was pretty amazing. But it was just kind of interesting to hear about some of the inmates that were there, and because they're all kind of like, there's a lot of crybabies that are the big names
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff that like to sue all the time, etc. But anyway, it was an interesting experience, etc. Nevertheless, so your experience here, and you went on and you talked about burnout and stuff, that you'd kind of reached a point in your career, which was probably a really formative part of it's basically what's likely made you into what you are today,
Sure.
with respect to doing all the what you're doing. So you get to this point of burnout. Explain what that was like, and kind of just to remind people what you were going through during that period of time.
Yeah, it happened at Springfield. Now I knew that I was stressed, and I knew that, I was maybe not handling things well at the time. I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing drugs or anything like that. Emotionally and how I treated other people, I wasn't doing well, and that included my family. They had to put up with a lot. But I walked out in the parking lot at Federal Medical, and I had worked like 4 16-hour shifts in a row, and I remember walking out in that parking lot, and I couldn't remember where my car was at. I didn't remember what day it was. I didn't remember anything. I was just done, and that was the moment when I said, you got to do something different. You got to change. You got to find a good reason to move on. There has to be. It's so hard to find positives in that job. And I've talked to younger staff about this. If you're a firefighter and you show up at a fire and you save all the other houses, but the one that was burning burns down, you're still a
Mhm.
hero,
Yeah.
right? And if you're a police officer, depending on what side of the argument you're on, one half likes you, the other half doesn't.
Hmm.
Corrections doesn't get any of that. We don't get any of that feedback from the public. Nobody ever says, in the morning, "Hey, I had a good night's sleep last night because no criminals crawled through my window because you
Yeah.
kept them behind a fence." And
Yeah.
so we don't ever get that kind of interaction. And I think that's tough for the people that work there, because you want a way to measure your success. You want a way to measure, how good you're doing in a job. And in corrections, I get the same shitheads every day doing the same shit every day. And so
Yeah.
there's never this measurement of, oh yeah, he's better, or yeah, I fixed him, or any of that. So that's what I was feeling, was just this overwhelming, what the hell am I doing? I'm spinning my heels and nothing's getting better. And I got into personal vision statements. And that was what I sat down for the next month or two, and I wrote out a personal vision statement that basically said, that I'm going to take care of the public, my family, and the people I work with, and the inmates in my charge. I'm not going to let fear control me at all. And, I'm going to lead for those who cannot. And I've got stories that go with each of those, but I've talked about that quite a bit. But not everybody can lead. Correction officers, correction staff have the opportunity to make crisis decisions almost every day of their career sometimes. They are exceptional leaders. They are exceptional decision makers. And nobody notices that. So that's the other thing I try to bring up. How do I get these guys to understand the skills they have? Confrontation. We have the ability to go stand in front of somebody 10 times bigger than us and go to your cell and use our words and use our emotional intelligence to get them to do what we need done, because I don't have 14 things on my belt. If I'm lucky, I've got keys and a can of OC.
Yeah.
Some jails have a taser, but we don't have all this stuff. So you become very good at communicating and confrontation and avoiding violence, de-escalation, that kind of stuff. But nobody ever says, hey, good job, you're good at that. So that's part of what I've been trying to do.
That's great. And that really kind of turned into one of your books. What's the name of that book that kind of talks about that?
Power Skills. And that's kind of a story in itself. I got to go to a training and I met an incredible instructor. He's at ILETA. We see each other all the time. And his name's Miles Cook. And he was teaching this class. And in this class, he said, if he was talking about emotional intelligence, and I'm about ready just to turn off, emotional intelligence. I've heard this over and over. And he says, if you've got good emotional intelligence skills, you've got a superpower. And I thought back in my career and the number of times that they sent a psychiatrist out during annual training to teach us about emotional intelligence. So if you can picture this, there's a back row of 30 big penitentiary correctional officers with their arms crossed. And here's this lady up front going, you need to be more empathetic. You need to understand their feelings more. And we're like, yeah, whatever. But I had been using emotional intelligence my whole entire career. I didn't realize what it was. It wasn't empathy and sympathy. Emotional intelligence is understanding who you are and what drives you, and then learning about the other person, and then taking that and managing the relationship. And so I took all that together and kind of what Miles said, and I wanted to put it in a place that corrections would actually pick it up. So I'm teaching power skills. That's literally what it is. It's power skills. If you can do these things with emotional intelligence, you can walk up there, and it works for anybody in any profession. But I use a lot of examples from my job in how I was able to use and understand and listen. When you go to the door and the inmate's like, hey, CO, come here. My piece of chicken's smaller than everybody else's. And he's cussing at you and he's banging on the door. Well, if you'll talk to him for a minute, if you'll give him a second, if you'll just listen, you might find out he got a letter from his grandma or from his mom that his grandma died and he's been pissed for a week because he's going to miss his grandma's funeral. And it's got nothing to do with the chicken. But most of the time, most people, they're going to react right at that moment. And learning to understand what your triggers are and how you respond to confrontation, how you respond to other people's emotions, can set the stage for everything, for being able to control these situations and de-escalate these situations and get to the point, the real point.
Well, let me ask you, who taught you some of this stuff? I mean, because was there somebody in your background that was kind of one of those correction officers that goes, hey, kid, and just kind of was like that mentor to you? Or is this stuff that you just kind of were on your own? And because this is deeper than most people are ever going to get in their thinking. And I think it's really interesting because really, police officers need to consider some of this stuff as well, and really any first responder. And that's why I like the fact that you kind of include them into this, because it's important for all of us. But was there anybody else that what was it that kind of opened the door for you on this stuff?
I'm gonna say that there were a lot of people that taught me, but they taught me through modeling. I don't remember somebody sitting down and putting this stuff together for me. And so I watched the best officers. I surrounded myself, and if you're a rookie and you're getting into police work, you're getting into corrections work, look at who your mentors are. Look to who everybody else looks to as a mentor. Don't grab a hold of the first person, because the person that wants to talk to you the most is the grumpy bastard that hates his job.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of gravitated towards these bigger than life correctional officers who were just good at their job. And so I think I learned most of it watching how they handled it, watching that they didn't blow up when things happened. They were calm. They waited. They took a moment. They listened. But I'm not lying to you. It didn't click till about 3 years ago when I was sitting in Miles's class and I went, I've been doing this my whole career. I got to put this on paper. That is literally the way it happened. I didn't even know that I was doing it that much until he put it in that. He reframed it for me,
Yeah. So that's one book. Let's talk. I at least want to just really mention the other books as well as we're going through here, just to remind people. And by the way, I have to commend you that the price on these books on Amazon, very affordable. Some of these books are like $8 or $8 or $9, which that's unheard of, nowadays. And I was like, any of these books, like I said, all of them are highly rated, and they look like they're quick reads. I mean, you got some books that are 120 pages or up to 200, and that's a quick read. And so, but it's got so much great stuff. Matter of fact, you can go to that website right there, www.cantrellwrites.com, and it's got all of it. I think you have one book out of print, but the rest of them, it was the one about your poetry. Unless I don't know, are you even any talk about putting that back in print?
I took that one out of print because if you buy The Weight of Justice, I took those poems and I capped off several chapters with what that poem, because those poem and those stories, some of them went together. They were happening at the same time. I was using poetry as a way to just decompress, a way to kind of understand some of my feelings and the violence I was seeing. So I took that original book. I did take it out of print because now I've got most of those poems in Weight of Justice.
Okay. The book that I really, really, I think is just epic, and it's probably not even close to being one of your best books. The newest book that you got out is probably the one that you're going to say is the best one to date, but it's the Book of Corrections. I may have the title wrong, but it's the one it's basically a roadmap of how to be a good correction officer and all of the different places out there that exist to get jobs and so forth. Yeah. What's the actual name to that book?
Keys to Your Career. And when I was at Thompson, I helped hire hundreds of new correctional officers. So I saw lots of resumes. I did a lot of employment interviews. And the other thing that happened about that time is correctional officers became a commodity. Before COVID, corrections, you pretty much went one place and you stayed at that agency. There's huge bonuses out there now. You see it in the police too. They're hiring from other agencies. They're putting bonuses out there. So there's no reason, if you're working, because I was one of those when I started off at Missouri State Pen in 1991. I made $14,622 a year, and to work in the bloodiest 47 acres in America. And so,
wow.
But you just stayed. And now correctional officers have some choices. That's why the appendix in that book, I've put every state corrections agency, federal, private, a few internationals, and it's the contact info, it's the minimum requirements, it's the salaries, the bonuses that I could find. And so all that's in the back. The first half of that book is I did a few podcasts early on called The Basics. And it was, this is what you need to do to be a good correctional officer. Number one, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen twice as much as you talk, and the old guys will teach you, and,
Yeah.
and then other stuff, how to do a resume. Don't ever give, and I see this a lot still, but don't ever hand over a resume that 5 people you trust have not looked at,
Mhm.
because you don't have another chance when you walk through that door and you hand it to me. I'm going to look at it and I'm going to know a lot about you just by the words you use, whether or not your writing's legible. A lot of places are now doing writing tests. I want to see you write a small essay so I can see if you can even write a sentence. And I'm going to know a lot about you. So make sure that you have, made this the best you can if you really want those jobs. So
Yeah.
it's stuff like that.
Make sure there's not any spelling errors. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. And
it's
that's
little
so
things
easy
like
these
that.
days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. There's really no excuse, actually. There's too many different sites. Back when we were younger, I mean, they didn't have the internet. So, I mean, nowadays, it's pretty easy. And then
Yeah.
there's like a red line underneath it if it's not right. So look to see what it is and pay close attention to detail. So that's
Yeah.
good. So you're giving them all these things that I would think that would be one of the top selling books that you've got on out of your group of books. That's just the one for me that is just
Yeah.
it's just an absolute gold mine of information. And
If
and
you're
so
when
I
you're
would I
starting.
would hope, yeah, when you're starting out. So if you're starting out, or if you even have any interest in this particular occupation and you're listening to this, that's a must buy, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not that expensive, and it's got a mother load of information in there for you. And then let's move on to the next book. Let's talk about another book that you've got out there out of your stable of books. Uh, were you even a writer before you start? I mean, literally,
Yeah.
has this
I
been
was.
always something in it? Were you okay? Because I was going to say this is insane how many books that you've been able to put out there, and
Yep.
it's pretty incredible. And so you were a writer, at least back in
In
the
high
day.
school, I wanted to be a journalist and I was a photographer and all that stuff. And then, like I said, the agencies, they didn't like you doing all this stuff. So a lot of it's just ideas that have been stewing for a while.
Yeah. So the other book that you talk about is what's your it's I maybe get
Finding
the
your
name
purpose.
Finding Your
Yep.
Purpose. Yeah.
Yep.
Let's talk about that one because I think this is
Sure.
really, and you kind of you touched upon it just a minute ago, but what is this a book about and what's somebody going to get out of this? Because this is something that's out of all of the books, I think that this is really a must. This is a biggie out of the
Yeah.
group.
This is a workbook. And that's the way I put it together. I told you I developed a personal vision statement, and that's what this book is. It walks you through making your own personal vision statement from the beginning to the end, figuring out, and I don't know if I said it before Simon Sinek or after, but he wrote a book called Finding Your Why. Well, finding your why is where you got to start. You've got to know why you're doing this job. For me, it became training. That was the epiphany I had within that couple of months doing this. I decided that I was going to make staff safe through training. I was going to give them the best training I could. And so it walks you through how to determine your why, how to find it, gives you some worksheets and stuff that step by step get you through there. And then, what is it that you get up in the morning for? What is it that drives you? And a lot of people go paycheck, insurance. Yeah, that's good, but that won't sustain you for 29 years. That's not enough. What is it that makes you get up in the morning? What makes you? I still get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I've been retired 5 years because I got so much stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and then it walks you through there, and then the final one is the toughest, which is the change. What change are you going to make to get to where you've decided you need to be? And so I walk you through that and the little tips and tricks. It's also a workbook I use. I teach that class sometimes, and so I use that workbook in my classes. But it's also available on Amazon.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. I think I mean, what is the response that you get back from people that actually have gotten that book and have given it a shot and actually are really doing it?
Yeah, I've got one saved here somewhere because it was a college student, and she told me that I changed her whole direction, and I was like, oh man, I mean, that's just great. I mean, to have that kind of effect on
Yeah.
someone, and to get them. Imagine if I'd have got to start when I was 18 or 20 down that path as a trainer, and knew what my why was and knew who I was doing things for. And, imagine if I'd have got a 10, 12-year start on that. So I've got that one in my computer here that I still look at once in a while because it means a lot to me.
Yeah. Well, how about imagine if all of the people that are out there in this industry, your industry, my industry, or any industry for that matter, actually went to work and they thought outside of the box and they were looking for new innovative ways to be better and to improve and all this, that, and the other. And I think that's there needs to be more of that. So hopefully there's no doubt that you're inspiring many, many people. There's just no doubt about it. And I've tried to do that myself. And it's just kind of tough when you're up against some of the bureaucracy at times, or people that are above you that may get jealous or whatever else is going on. But that's good. So the next thing, let's talk about another book. Throw another book out there that's one of those out of the group that we need to just touch upon. That this is the one that's out of print. That's the one that's got all your poems and stuff in there.
But if you buy Weight of Justice, you'll get most of those poems.
Okay.
I wanted to combine that because the stories and those poems occurred at the same time. And they're very reflective of the places I was working at the time, Missouri State Pen in Leavenworth. That one of those poems is about an old oak tree that I used to, when you're standing watch on the yard and there's this oak tree out in the middle, and I just got to wondering how much blood has soaked into the roots of that tree. And what did that do to a tree to just get, that much blood in its roots? And so that's where one of the poems came from, was just my imagination, wondering about stuff like that and trying to deal with the violence. I tell people I used to fight every weekend. We'd go drink, we'd fight on the square. That was no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole different thing when you go to prison and somebody attacks you and tries to take your life. That's a different level of violence that most people will never understand, and it changes you. It changes you forever when that happens.
Yeah, I agree with you. Amanda's written something that she thinks that it sounds incredible. And I was thinking the exact same thing about the blood getting into the roots of that tree. Interesting stuff. I'm not a huge poem guy, but I was like, that's kind of, it has a visual you can visualize it. And it's just kind of cool, So, all right. So this, you've written some children books. We didn't talk about that the last time. And I got to tell you, man, this really was intriguing to me. Because, well, the first thing I thought about is I thought, this is pretty cool. And there's the book. You're holding it up there. There's that book. Did you do the illustrations, or did you have somebody else do that for you?
No, I did. I wrote those poems 30 years ago.
Okay.
I tried to find some illustrators. It was very expensive. You're not going to make a ton of people. You're not going to make a ton of money. I don't make Stephen King money off books. Okay.
Right.
So I wasn't able to pay $3,000-$4,000 to have somebody, do the illustrations on something like this.
Those look pretty darn good, Mike.
I did them on AI.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because those look good. I was going to say that's pretty amazing. And so this one, is there anything specific? What are we talking about? This is kind of cool. The first day of Sky School. So what are these books about, just briefly? Just what age group are we talking about?
Yeah, 4 to 8, something like that, depending on reading level. It's rhyming. It's rhyming all the way through.
Okay.
Wendy's first day of Sky School, she's a young cloud. She goes up there and she meets the thunder clouds, she meets the snow clouds, and she tries to make a rainbow, and she tries to make snow, and it doesn't work. And she doesn't know where she fits in. And she ends up, crying. And while she's crying, her tears drop to the ground and things start growing. So Wendy gets to figure out, her purpose in life, which is that she's a rain cloud and that she makes things grow. All of them have like a moral like that. How do rainbows grow was a question my 3-year-old asked me, my son. He's like, Daddy, how do rainbows grow? And I was like, that's a cool question, and I wrote this little poem about a young boy who gets a race car and goes to the hardware store and gets a jar, and then he builds a rocket and goes to the sun and gets some sun. Then he gets an airplane, gets some rain, and he mixes it up, and he finds out at the end only God can make a rainbow. It's a promise. And so they all have it's not they're Christian themes, but they're moral themes is what I'll call them.
Okay.
And so they've all got a good theme. But the thing I've
Very
liked
cool.
the most with these is I've got invited to several kids lit book signings. So to go and sit with the kids and read to them or hear them read to me, it's just been amazing. And it's kind of cracked this old tough heart a little bit doing some of that. Kind of feel like the Grinch, you know, the heart broke, the heart cracked just a little bit.
I love that. I do, because that's super cool. It's like a whole nother world that you're
Yeah.
able to. It's completely opposite of talking about prisons. You're talking about the formative. I mean, this is it's so cool that you're doing that. Do you have any in the works? Any others? Or how hard are those for you to write? How hard is that for you to do one of those?
Oh, now that I've gotten the weight of justice out of the way, I've got a good idea about two kittens on Noah's Ark who are going to solve a mystery.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah. So
all right.
That's the next one I'm working on.
Very cool. So, did we miss any of the other books before we get to the biggie, the most recent? Okay, so let's talk about the most recent book. Oh, we have that one there. That's about your relative, right? Isn't that a relative?
It is, and that one is currently being redone. It's going to be called Echoes of the Ozark. So I hope that comes out by the end of the year. I've been working on it and adding to it because I've added other parts of my family into it, not just that was my great grandmother's journals and her writing and her poems. That must be where I got it from. And it's I never met her, but I think I know her as well as anybody because I've read 40 years worth of journals and read her poems and stuff. But she died before I was born.
40 years of journals?
And she started, or 30. She started when she had 5 sons and a daughter that all went into World War II. And that was when she started journaling. And
incredible.
That up from 41 or 42, whichever one it was. And then she also did it for the local newspaper and wrote some poems for them and stuff. So quite a writer. And so maybe that's where I got it from. But
man, that's got to be some amazing stories that she wrote about throughout her life.
She was it's just journals. It's just little days, but it's so interesting because she understood the woods and the birds and the animals so specifically. She says in one place, as I lay here in bed, I can identify 16 different birds by their calls, and she talks about transplanting the road grader was coming through the area. So they transplanted some wildflowers so that they would live. She just loved the Ozarks so much and loved the animals and the fauna and the flora that, make up where I live.
Yeah, that sounds just as good as any of the other ones. Or all of them sound just incredible. And so let's talk about this big book that you just put out, because this is one that you're really excited about. And actually, absolutely. I got to thank you for reaching out to me and wanting to come back on. It means a lot to me. Yeah. And you said that, this is kind of one of those first shows. It's not your first one probably to talk about this, but it's a big deal that I'm
this is other than mine. You are my first. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Then I'm honored. So let's talk about this book, because this is one you're really proud of.
I am. This one is one of those that has floated around for a long time, and I finally got it put together. I needed some help. I'm not going to lie. I hired an editor, Sandra Wendell, off of Right On out of Nebraska, just north of you. And she was able to take all this writing that I'd put together and put it in an order for the reader, because I had all these stories, and I never could do that myself to where I thought the reader would like it, it would flow. And so she helped me with that, and I'm eternally grateful, and I'm so happy with it. But I talked about how prison changes you, and I start off with one of the first stories that I may not be proud of. I had 3 editors that told me they wouldn't do the book because I wouldn't take cuss words out of it, and I wouldn't lessen what I described. So if you're going to get this book, just be aware. If they said F you, guess what I wrote? That's what I wrote.
No, I noticed that. I noticed that on the back cover. You were talking about that. You gave a little bit of a disclaimer about that, and I thought, all right, I wonder why he did that. But now you're saying it. So,
Nope.
No,
And
that's
I
good.
described
So
exactly
go
what
ahead.
I saw. Yeah, I described exactly what I saw and heard. But the first one was a guy who it was the first time I got spit on. And I may not be proud of it, but I got my revenge. I went back and I chewed skull at the time, and I sat there and chewed, thinking about what I was going to do. And then I was like, oh, I know what I'm going to do. And so I go back down the range, and he comes up to the bars to do it again, and I spit on him. And we ended up, I'm not going to give everything away, but he ended up trying to put a hit on me on the inside, and he ended up getting stabbed, and I responded to that stabbing, and he's laying there on the ground bleeding. And I realized something at that time. I didn't care. And I was raised up in church, but I didn't care. I had nothing for him, because of working in that environment, and what he'd done to me, and the words we'd had. And that didn't make me very human. And that's the kind of stuff you have to start living with, this change in yourself. I tell another story about an inmate who was dying and wanted me to hold his hand. Well, I've got a pistol on my side. This ain't my job to hold your hand. And so I go through this whole thing of, what am I supposed to do? What would you do if a dying man asked you to hold his hands while he died? He was dying of liver failure, and they knew he was going to go. He was on morphine.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just recently put that one down on paper, because I've had, over the years, I did hold his hand when he died, felt him go
Yeah.
cold,
Yeah.
and walked away from it feeling so dirty, because I had crossed a line, and I had crossed a line with my profession, and I had crossed a line with the people I work with, because we don't hold hands with inmates. We don't, that's not what we do. And that was something that took me a long time to get over. And those scars, I said on the website, some scars last longer. How do you get past some of that? How do you deal with it? And I wasn't very good at it. And I'm very honest about, some of the stuff that I saw and did. And then towards the end, I bring it all back around to some of the leadership things I was able to do and learn and overcome. And I think the reader's going to see, even because I start off with a couple of pretty bad stories, and you're like, man, that guy is an asshole. Matter of fact, one of the editors told me, they're not going to like you. I was like, well, I don't know that I'm writing it to be liked, but I think it comes back around at the end, and you get to see how I came out of it, and how I brought myself out of it, how I learned resilience, how I learned to forgive myself, for some of the stuff that I saw, because you don't ever, this. I mean, you've been doing homicide forever. You go to sleep sometimes, and you still see things just as vivid as you did the day that they happened, the first time you walked up on them. And I still see that stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's okay. And I don't think anybody ever tells us that.
Yeah. I definitely do that from time to time. Usually I can pretty much tell, okay, yeah, we're in a dream, but
Yeah.
it is pretty vivid. It's pretty vivid stuff. And that brings me to my next question. It's kind of a personal one, but
Sure.
did you I've said this for a long time. Actually, I said this when I was speaking up in Indiana, and that is, I just don't think, uh, I if you do this long enough, I think you're going to be touched with PTSD to some extent. There's just going to be something that's going to alter things up. You're changed. Number one, you're going to be a different kind of a person. I don't see how you can be unless you're just a complete sociopath, and
Right.
then nothing affects you. And I actually I appreciate the fact that you were honest in that book, and that I think that's going to be what's going to make it a real winner. Because if you're not going to tell the stories, then what's the point? You know what I mean? And to be candid about it, I think that's pretty incredible. And whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, but I think that's great that you did that. So my question to you is, did you suffer from some PTSD? And if so, did you ever kind of explore anything, or was it ever anything that you ever thought about? EMDR, or because that's kind of the big thing now that people are
Yeah.
kind of doing, or EMDR music, and that stuff's free. That stuff you can do at home, or anything
Sure.
along those lines.
I know a lot of people who've talked to me, and they have PTSD. I don't know that I do. I've never went to somebody The thing that I saw in my own life was how I affected my family. And, you know, they put up with a guy that wasn't there. And when he was there, he was still thinking about work. I did do a good job while I was working of not letting work become all I knew. I used to compete in Scottish Highland games for about 14 years, wore a kilt through the cabers and all that stuff. So we would go do that on weekends, and that would get me out of there. But I watched a lot of people who, and my wife says I do. She says, you know, when you people get together, the only thing you talk about is prison. You've been in there all day. Why are you still talking about it?
Yeah.
And I'll go to a party and talk to 3 correctional officers and ignore everybody else because they don't understand the same way these 3 guys that worked inside did. Even
Yeah.
if we didn't work inside together, there's this connection that we've seen the same stuff. And so I think I kept myself that way healthy. I don't know that I don't know that I do. I'm functioning pretty good now.
Mhm. Yeah, no, of
But
course.
it wasn't fair to my wife and kids to have a guy who was upset, who was mad. You know, I tell people, you know, when a 4-year-old runs up and hugs your leg and you're just like, you know, and I don't know what to do with that because I don't touch people all day. And I'm, you know, I feel dirty inside.
Mhm.
And you shouldn't feel that way when your kid comes to hug you,
Yeah.
you know. And so there's a
Yeah.
lot of guilt goes with that and stuff. If anything, I would probably say that I suffer more from some guilt about a lot of what I didn't do and for people. And I'm talking outside. I don't have any guilt about my job. I think I did a pretty good
Mhm.
job. I
Yeah.
think I served my community, but
Sure.
I could have been a better friend. I could have been a better family member, a better father, a better husband.
Yeah.
Uh,
Me
yeah.
too. Me too. Me too. And I admit that
Yeah.
literally. And when I hear you say that, I appreciate that a lot because, uh, yeah, yeah, we all in this business probably could. And I was
Yeah.
just talking to an older guy that he's like, yeah, you know, nowadays I'm being much more of a family guy than I was back in the day. And I'm like,
Yeah.
good for you, and I am as well. And that's why I don't miss homicide 1 second. I still love the crime type. I love the investigative end of it. I love everything that was about, just like you did. That's
Yeah.
what you became. You're like
Yeah.
Mr. Corrections. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I think that's just tremendous. And your podcast. Let's mention this. Your podcast. If we mentioned it earlier, I just want to get a little bit deeper in it. This is it. It's the
Uh-huh.
Prison Officer Podcast. This thing, you've had many episodes. You said 130 something, I think, is where you're at.
Yeah.
Or where are
Yeah.
you at? Okay, that's great. And so, what's just kind of some of the stuff that you talk on? Where is this at, and where do they find it? And it's
Sure.
probably everywhere, pretty much everywhere, right?
Well, so about a year ago, I went on YouTube. Up till then, I was all audio, but you can find it at www.theprisonofficer.com. It shows up pretty easy if you type that in.
Okay.
So you can watch video on YouTube, or you can still listen to audio, which is still the bigger draw. I think more people walk on the treadmill and listen in the car than try to sit and watch me talk for an hour. So, but no, it's I've been so lucky, and people ask me, how did you get some of your guests? I just called them. I read a book and I was like, this is a great book, and I'm gonna call the publisher, and then they'll put me in contact. And
Hmm.
I've had people from other countries. I had David Grossman on not too long ago,
Yeah.
Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, who's a fantastic speaker, and
Yeah.
it meant a lot to me because he was the first time I heard the sheepdog analogy, and I felt like I was a sheepdog. You know, that's what corrections does. We keep the
Yeah.
wolves at bay. And so it was a pleasure to have him on there. Greg Williams and Brian Mirren, who started the Combat Hunter program for the Marines, where they didn't do the book, but that's where the book Left of Bang came from. And I had them
Yeah.
on there, and they were. I'm waiting to get them back on again because they're like prison is a lab of situational awareness. And so we had some great conversations about that.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
trainers, wardens, directors, and whoever I can get that I want to teach about leadership. I want to teach about training. I want to teach about resilience. I think that's what the officers need. And the prisonofficer.com is strictly for officers. I don't do inmate interviews. I don't do family interviews, stuff like that. I'm there for the correctional officer.
Okay. No, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. And so that's awesome. And you've been doing that and it's going strong. Ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen, if you don't realize this, most people, when they start a podcast, they quit after about 3 to 5 episodes. And so we're one of the rare group that continue to persevere. And I think that's good because it takes a lot of discipline to just continue to do it. So there you got that. And I love the fact that you do the videos too, because actually that's how I prefer to watch. I like to watch, so that's kind of a deal. Yeah. But all right. So from there, and you do speak, and I want to at least mention that because I think that's a big thing. And that's something that now that since you are technically kind of retired, from at least from the prison industry, you are out there and you're speaking and you're doing a lot of stuff in reference to that. And so what is it that people are going to get, and what's kind of the stuff that you talk about? I'm sure you talk a little bit about what we've already talked about, but what specifically are the types of classes that you're doing out there across this country?
Yeah, I speak and I work for 2 companies. One, I'm still a master instructor for pepperball, so I teach pepperball instructor and armor classes. A couple of years ago, John Bostaine asked me to come to work for Command Presence, who does law enforcement training around the country, and he said, I want to give corrections the training they deserve. And I was like, oh, wow, you got me. So we develop a bunch of classes: leading without rank, leading when it hits the fan. I just did one on testimony and depositions, and we just put together a new one that I'm going to do the first class next month on hospital and court escorts and transports. And those are strictly corrections classes. For so many years, I paid a lot of my, I tell people, invest in yourself. Even if your agency won't, go to your own classes. And I did. I paid for my own classes. And a lot of times I was the one correctional officer sitting in the back with a bunch of police officers, because that's where I could get the information. The corrections didn't have, classes for them. So anyway, we've put that together. So I've been traveling all over the country. I just got back from Seattle and Lansing and New Orleans and doing that. But I've also been speaking. Correctional Workers Week was amazing. I was all over the country for 3 weeks, got to see the best of the best. Got to teach a leadership class to a federal prison and hear from people who are doing, I was in those leadership classes one time, and then here I am giving it back. And that was so cool. Got to see an organization named One Voice United, who's doing great things for corrections, and got to watch the 3 Medal of Honor winners for corrections, given their medals, and they had a great dinner. And yeah, I can't believe the things I've got to be part of. And yeah.
By the way, when you mentioned that about them getting awards, there needs to be more of that. There really needs to be more recognition given out there. It's not that's not what we're out there for. And you hear a lot of people going, well, that's not what well, it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. And I saw that in Indiana as well. And I thought it was really epic for them to point out a few people for just being a little bit above the norm. And it's worthy of recognition at times to inspire others to be better. And so right. No, I think that's great. So because of all of the other stuff that you've done with these books and stuff, now of course somebody came across your book and then they wanted you, but did you notice people in the crowd really knowing who you were in some of these places?
It's happening some, I've had a couple of people who wanted an autograph, which is just
gosh,
I'll do
good
that.
For you.
They've been listening to the podcast. Yeah.
Oh, how cool is that? Yeah.
It was. I had 2 girls in the class a couple of months ago, and they were like, hey, we listened to your podcast. And I was like, cool. That's, they were correctional officers out of North Carolina is where they were out of. And so, yeah, I mean, I've been listened to. If you look on Buzzsprout, I've been listened to in 141 countries and territories. And that's one of the things it's one of the things I learned about corrections. Everywhere in the world, somebody is sitting in a broken chair watching an inmate.
Yeah.
And I've had 2 people out of Australia that were correctional officers. I've had one out of England. And I just interviewed, it's been last year, a retired Marine who was the warden at a brig in Okinawa, and now he's retired in Japan. And so he had amazing stories.
Oh yeah, of
So
course.
yeah,
Of
but I get
course.
to hear people all over the place. Pat Bliss, who's an artist out of Canada, who wrote, I won't think of the name, son of a gun. Anyway, his art is his prison that he worked in, and it's amazing because he's got like a picture where he's walking in and as a young man, and he's walking out as an old man, side by side. And if you look in the walls of, because he worked in a big old prison with walls, and if you look in the walls, all the faces are watching him come in and watching him go out 25 years later. And it's really poignant to see some stuff like that. I love highlighting these amazing people in corrections. That's why I still do this. That's why I still going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. Well, there's something about it. It fascinates the public. The public is fascinated because they don't know really what goes on up behind there. They want to know. They don't want them in their zip code, but they darn sure want to know what's going on. And so I got to tell you, Mike, I listen, man, I really appreciate you coming on here. You're one of a kind. I know that you said that there's somebody up in Nebraska that's doing something similar, but I don't know that they're doing anything close to what you're doing. I don't know what they're doing, but I know that you're doing a ton, and that's commendable. And I really appreciate people like you in whatever industry it is that's willing to go out there and sacrifice your time. It's not about the money. You're not getting rich, but it's about putting the word out there and making. There's going to be so many people that are made better just based on your books that you will have no idea. You'll have no idea. But
just starting the conversation. That's what I want to do. I just want to start the conversation. The amazing stuff that happens behind those walls is just as amazing as what people picture in their mind, but it's not the same. It's not Orange is the New Black. It isn't the king of, the mayor of Kingtown or whatever. That's not prison. But what goes on behind those walls is just as amazing, but it's different.
I mean, I think the prison movie that really stands out to me is American Me. American Me.
Solid
and that's
movie.
kind of the movie that talks about La MA, and it's tremendous to watch. I don't know if you knew this, but Edward James Olmos in that movie, I think they put out a hit on him because the Mexican mafia wasn't too pleased about the homosexual connotations in that movie. And so I somehow down the line, from what I understand, there was a little bit of a payout to settle the score to get them off of the hit list. But it's a tremendous movie, ladies and gentlemen. If you ever get a chance to watch it, I think it's incredible. It's one of those movies that's just fabulous to watch. Scary, but it's a good movie. Man, I can't thank you enough. Is there anything that we didn't touch upon that we really need that you wanted to bring up that we should bring up? You've got a website; they can contact you on that. You've got several other sites I've noticed too that they can get. That you have information on. Corrections. There was a corrections one. Is that corrections one or?
That's where they have ran a bunch of my articles. Pretty much, if you'll go to theprisonofficer.com or cantrellwrites.com, you can get a hold of me. That's where most of my stuff is, compiled at. And Mike,
look up his YouTube channel. Subscribe to his channel. Check out his podcast. And give him a look because I mean seriously, it's worth listening to. I wouldn't. I'm a super fan, man. I am. I'm a fan of yours, Mike. I'm telling you right now, I am. I didn't say that just to say it. You're one of my top guests that I've had on the show that is actually out making a serious impact in this world, and I appreciate that, ladies and gentlemen. I want to. What a fitting person for episode number 99. Next week, it's going to be Freddie Ponce. Freddie Ponce is going to be on here for episode number 100 because Cato Kalin, he's in the middle of filming something out in Tennessee. And Freddie Ponce actually reached out to me. He's written a book, and he's got that PhD behind his name, and he's an OG homicide guy. He's one of my big homies. So he's one of those guys from Miami Homicide, and he's done a ton too. He's one of those. He's just like you, man. I mean, he won't stop. He's out there doing all kinds of great stuff. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Good. And I appreciate it. I appreciate you being a friend of the show, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
means a lot to me, and to have you on here for twice. That's great. If ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you. I know that as the end of this thing is, I know that everybody that's in here is the regulars. I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be camping with my family. It was a last minute thing, and it came up, and I was like, you know what? I'm taking the travel trailer out. So this reception's really spotty, and I don't have Starlink. I need to get it to where I can do this anywhere on the planet. But I will be checking, and I'll be trying to respond to questions as they come in. And by all means, and if you by the way, Mike, if you're not doing anything and this thing pops up on Friday, man, come in there. They'll be messaging all kinds of stuff, and
Oh,
feel
okay.
free to communicate with them as this episode plays if they've got questions. And but ladies and gentlemen, sorry, this isn't going to be a live one, but it's going to be pre-recorded. That's what we're doing. It'll air Friday. You won't know the difference up until now, until I just mentioned it to you. You just probably thought I was ignoring you. But I know that all the regulars are going to be in here, and I can't thank you all enough. This show is not a show without you. I appreciate it very much. Remember to like and subscribe. Go to that YouTube page and like and subscribe. You know what? It takes you a microsecond to hit that button, and I appreciate it. It helps with the algorithm. And then don't forget to follow me on my Detective Jason White Facebook page, my Instagram, anything. You can go to, there's my Instagram. Please follow me on that as well. And that's TikTok. And TikTok, man, I don't know if you've ever experienced TikTok a little bit, but I don't know. Have you checked it out? Are you a TikToker yet?
I have not. Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn so far are mine.
All right. So that's where people can follow you and check you out, and at least on LinkedIn for sure. But that's it. Hey, listen, I appreciate everybody being here tonight. Go buy his books. They're inexpensive. And I was sitting over here on my couch and I was ordering 2 of them already. So I'm going to get some of these books and I'm going to give you the feedback on them. And I have no doubt they're going to be epic. So I'm not worried about that. They're going to be great. And Mike, thanks again, buddy. I really appreciate it. This is going to be, once again, I think this is an epic episode. Your message is pretty incredible. And like I said, I think that this is good for the correction industry, really, because they just don't get anybody like you that comes out there. And you told us why, but there needs to be more of this. And every correction officer out there needs to know about you. They need to know that this even exists. So I'm going to help you get the word out, and hopefully, all right. And all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Amanda behind the curtain. I want to thank Chris DePerno, who does a lot for me behind the curtain as well. And until next week, ladies and gentlemen, and next week will be live. I'm telling you, it will be live. We were going to do this live, and I appreciate you altering your schedule at a very short notice. I appreciate it. My grandson appreciates it. Until next week, take us out, Amanda.